Alright guys, sorry I can't be there today. I'm not feeling well. But I do want to go over the notes with you before you get started on the assignment in hopes that we can avoid a lot of questions or uncertainty. So I'm going to go over the notes and then I'm going to have you start the assignment, which I've emailed to you. I will give about 5 to 10 minutes on Monday to go over any questions since I won't be there while you're doing the assignment. That way, if you have any questions or you get stuck this weekend, just plan on going over it with me Monday. So we're on page 101 and 102 in your notebook. And we're solving equations with variables, but this time the variable is going to show up on both sides of the equal sign. So our goal is still going to be the same, to get the variable by itself, but first we're going to have to combine them, and that means moving one to the other side. So we're looking at number 1 here, 6m equals 4m plus 12. I want you to be taking these notes in your notebook while I do them on the screen here. And I'm going to do this first one 2 ways, just so that you can see that there's not a right or wrong first step. There's often an easier or harder first step, but not a right or wrong. So I'm going to do this one 2 ways, and then the rest we'll just do 1 way. Alright, so what I want you to notice is that obviously we have 6m and 4m, and we have to combine them because they are like terms, but they're on separate sides of the equal sign. So that means we'll either have to take this 4m and move it over here, or we'll have to take this 6m and move it over here. We can do either or, but we can't do both. So I'm going to start with the 4m, and then I'll show you what it would look like with the 6m being moved. Okay, what I want you to notice is that because we want to move this entire term, we're not looking at dividing yet, because I want to take this entire thing and move it to the other side. And it's being added to the 12, and it's positive. So if I have 4m and I want to get that to 0, I'm going to subtract 4m, because 4m minus 4m is 0. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to do that to both sides. On the left I have 6m minus 4m, which is 2m. On the right, 4m minus 4m is 0 plus 12. So essentially my equation now is 2m equals 12. And this should look very familiar. To get m by itself, you divide both sides by 2, and you get an answer of m equals 6. Now Tyler, I know you like to check the problems, so I'm going to show you how to do that. You can check the problems by taking your answer and plugging it in for m in the original equation. So we would do 6 times m, which we now know is 6, and we'd be asking, does that equal 4 times 6 plus 12? Well, 6 times 6 is 36. We'd be asking, does that equal 24 plus 12? And when we simplify, we'd get 36 equals 36. So we know we did the problem correct with an answer of m equals 6. Now I told you I was going to do this 2 ways, and that's because the question I usually get is, how did you know to move the 4m as opposed to the 6m? And the answer is that you can do either, but one will create a shorter problem for you and one will add in an extra step. So if I had moved the 6m, I would still have subtracted it because 6m minus 6m is 0. And I would have subtracted it on both sides. So I would now have 0 equals 4 minus 6 is negative 2m plus 12. Now what I want you to notice is that suddenly now we have everything on the right side of the equation. This is why this option adds in an extra step, because now you have to move something back to the other side. Eventually we want to get m on one side and all the numbers on the other. So I would either have to move that negative 2m or move that positive 12 over to the other side, which creates your extra step. So I'm now going to add 2m back to the other side. So I'll have 2m equals 0 plus 12, which is 2m equals 12, and you'll notice we're right back where we were with the other problem, with the other solution to this problem, where we divide by 2 and we get m equals 6. I show you this so that you understand that as long as you follow the rules of doing the opposite, and whatever you do to one side you do to the other, you'll get the right answer regardless of which one you chose to move first. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at this again with a second problem. Example 2 says 5n equals 3n plus 26. Now if we're looking at this from the perspective of the last problem, if I moved this 5n to the other side, I would have everything on the right and would have to move something back. So I'm going to move the 3n. I'm going to subtract 3n from both sides. 5n minus 3n is 2n equals 3n minus 3n is 0 plus 26. So now I actually have 2n equals 26. To get n by itself, I'm going to divide by 2, and I'll get n equals 13. Again, we can go ahead and check it if we want. We'd be doing 5 times 13 and asking ourselves, does it equal 3 times 13 plus 26? 5 times 13 would be 65. And I'd be asking, does that equal 39 plus 26? I'd end up with 65 equals 65. So I know I did my problem correctly. So essentially these problems are all about combining like terms first, making sure you get all the n's on one side and all the numbers on the other. Let's look at example 3. Now this example, again, if I were to move the 8w over, I would have everything on the right and would have to add to move something back. So I'm instead going to move the 4w. This 4w is negative or minus. You can look at it either way. In order to get that to 0, I'm going to have to add. Add 4w to both sides. (8w plus 4w is 12w) equals 36 plus 0. So I have 12w equals 36. To get w by itself, yep, that's right, sorry. To get w by itself, I'm going to divide by 12 on both sides. I get w equals 3. If I want to check my work, I would do 8 times 3, and I'd be asking myself, does that equal 36 minus 4 times 3? 8 times 3 is 24. Does that equal 36 minus 12? And I would get 24 equals 24, which tells me my answer is correct. For your next example, we're doing the same type of problem. I want to get all the y's to one side. This 2y is the one that I'm going to move first. It's being added to the 40 and it's positive, positive, so I'm going to subtract it to the other side. When I do this calculation, 4y minus 2y is 2y equals 0 plus 40. And you don't have to write this middle step that I've been writing where I have the 0 in there. If you understand that this is going right to 2y equals 40, I'm fine with you going right to that line. To get y by itself, you're going to divide by 2 on both sides, and we'll get y equals 20. To check our work, which again is something I recommend but do not require, and remember you can check your work using a calculator. We're going to plug this in, so 4 times 20, does it equal 2 times 20 plus 40? 4 times 20 is 80, and we're asking ourselves, does it equal 40 plus 40? And sure enough, we get 80 equals 80, so we know we did the problem correctly. Okay, so now as we move on to page 102 and look at the last 4 examples, what you'll notice is that no longer do we only have 3 terms, we now have 4 terms, 2 on each side. So again, with this first problem, I'm going to do it twice. With the rest of them, I'll just do it once, but I want you to remember that there's more than one first step. And as long as you follow the rules, you'll get the right answer. So I'm going to just take one step in the right direction. So I'm going to, just like we've been doing, take one of my terms that includes an n, and I'm going to move it to the other side. So I'm going to take this negative 2n, and I'm going to add 2n to both sides. Now I have 19 plus 9n equals 0 plus 37. So 19 plus 9n equals 37. This should actually look familiar to you because these are the types of problems we started with, where the first thing we move is what's being added or subtracted. So I'm going to subtract out that 19. I'll have 9n equals 17 minus 9 is 8, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So 9n equals 18. I'm going to divide by 9 and get n equals 2. Now, I told you I was going to do this problem 2 ways. And the reason for that is I want you to see what would happen if I had moved the 7n instead of the 2n. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the work that I just did. Bear with me for just a minute until I find a shorter way to do this. Okay, so this time instead of moving the 2n, I'm going to move the 7n, and I'm going to subtract it from both sides. Now I would have 19 plus 0 equals, now pay attention because you have 2 negative numbers there. Same sign, we're going to add them together and keep the sign. So 2 and 7 is 9, so this is a negative 9n plus 37. 19 equals negative 9n plus 37. Now I'm going to have to subtract that 37. I'll get negative 18 equals negative 9n plus 0. And to get n by itself, I'm going to divide by negative 9. Whoops, I don't usually draw that line there. N equals 2. You'll notice we got the same exact answer. The benefit to the first way, the reason I would always choose to move that 2n first, is so that I don't have to deal with the negative number. There are going to be times when you can't avoid it and you just have to deal with a negative number. But if I can avoid it, I do. So I always take a minute to look at my original equation first and see which move would make this problem the easiest for me. Okay, so let's look at example 6. So if I look at this, if I'm going to move this 2a, I'm going to be adding 2a. Whereas if I'm going to move this 6a, I'm going to be subtracting. I'm going to choose to add the 2a. So I'm going to add 2a to both sides. I'll get 8 plus 8a equals 0 plus 24. So if I just simplify, 8 plus 8a equals 24. I'm going to now subtract that 8 to the other side. I'll have 0 plus 8a, so just 8a, equals 16. Divide by 8. And I'll get a equals 2. I know I didn't check that last problem with you, but you can check these the same way. So if I want to check my work, I have 8 plus 6 times 2, and I'm asking myself, does that equal negative 2 times 2 plus 24? 8 plus 12, I'm asking, does that equal negative 4 plus 24? I get 20 equals 20, so I know I did my problem correctly. Almost done. We have 2 more examples. Example 7, again, when I'm looking at what's going to be easiest to move, if I move that 3b, I'm going to be subtracting. If I move that 4b, I'm going to be adding. I want to work with the addition rather than the negatives that'll come with subtraction. So I'm going to add 4b. You can do either one and get the right answer. It's all personal preference. So 42 plus 7b equals 0 minus 14. So just to rewrite that, 42 plus 7b equals negative 14. Don't lose that negative. Now I'm going to subtract 42 from both sides. We have 7b on the left, and again notice 2 negatives. We're adding and subtracting here, we're not multiplying and dividing. So the same sign, we're going to add them together and keep that sign. So negative 56. Notice here, we couldn't help it. We have to deal with a negative number regardless of what we moved first. Some problems you're just going to have to deal with it. So when I divide by 7, I'm going to get b equals negative 8. If I want to check that work to make sure I did it right, I'm doing this on an angle because I'm running out of room. 42 plus 3 times negative 8, does it equal negative 4 times negative 8 minus 14? So we have 42. My positive 3 times negative 8 is going to produce a negative 24. Does that equal? My negative 4 times negative 8 is going to produce a positive 32 minus 14. So when I actually do that work, 42 minus 24 is going to be 18, and 32 minus 14 is also going to be 18, so we know that we did that correctly. Alright, last problem. I have my C's here, and I'm going to actually this time move my 8a first so that I can add it rather than subtracting the I'm sorry, I said A, 8c, rather than subtracting the 3c. So I'm going to add 8c to both sides. I'm going to get negative 6 plus 0 equals 11c plus 16. So if I rewrite that, negative 6 equals 11c plus 16. I now have to subtract that 16 to the other side. Notice that they're both negatives, so I'm going to add them together, 22, and keep the negative sign. Negative 22 equals 11c plus 0. To get c by itself, I'm going to divide by 11. c is going to equal negative 2. If I want to check that, I'll have negative 6 minus 8 times negative 2. Does that equal 3 times negative 2 plus 16? Negative 6, now we have a negative 8 times a negative 2, we're going to get a positive 16. Does that equal negative 6 plus 16? In this one you don't even have to go any further because you have the exact same thing on both sides, so you know you did it correctly. Okay, so at this point now you're going to start the assignment that I emailed to you. Do your best, ask each other for help if you need it, and keep in mind that we'll take the first 5 to 10 minutes on Monday to go over any questions before we grade the assignment. You can feel free to email me at any time if you need help or have a question, and I will look forward to seeing you on Monday.